All right. Hello, everybody. First of all, thank you very much for joining us here for this short webinar. We'll explain you how to detect and fix SQL injection vulnerabilities. My name is Jan. I'm here from Crashtest Security. We are a cybersecurity startup based in Munich, and we are looking to make the life of QA testers and DevOps engineers simpler through automated penetration tests. You as participants don't have any video and you're muted, so you will be able to change that later during the questions and answers, but feel free to type any questions you have during the session into the chat window. I'll be monitoring that, but Janosch will go into more details of the demo content. We'll also be recording this webinar to share it later via YouTube, so anybody who missed it can watch it later. So let's dive right into what we have planned for today. This is the first webinar of a series of webinars that we are planning. Today we are going to focus on what SQL injections actually are, how hackers exploit SQL injections, and then we're going to show you 3 ways of testing your app against SQL injection vulnerabilities. The first one is going to be very manual. The second one is semi-automated using a tool called SQLMap. And the last one is an automated testing using our Crashtest Security suite. And in the end, we're going to show you how to fix SQL injection vulnerabilities. That should take around 20 minutes. And after that, we'll dive right into the questions and answers. But I will be watching the chat window. So if you have any questions while Janosch is doing the demo, then you can easily type that into the chat window. Either I'll answer it right away or we'll catch it for later. So with that, let me present to you who we are and what we do. So as I already said, my name is Jan Wiederrecht. I do community outreach for Crashtest Security. And with us today as well is Janosch, who is the co-founder of Crashtest Security and who will start with the demo right now.
Hi, I'm Janosch, one of the co-founders of Crashtest Security, and one part as my job here is and was to develop our automated security scanner. So therefore, I have some knowledge about the vulnerabilities that we're testing, and I'm going to talk about SQL injections today. So the first question is, how do hackers exploit SQL injections? And I don't want to just talk about it, but really show you hands-on what SQL injections are and how they work. So basically, what happens in an SQL injection is that you are entering some arbitrary information which you're not supposed to enter, for example, in a form. And instead of putting there in the login form, you see here your username, you could put there a database command such as drop table. And then if it's not sanitized correctly, then the database will run it and delete all your database content. So you as a user can run database commands that you're not supposed to do. So I have an application installed here, which is called Damn Vulnerable Web Application. And this application, for example, has some vulnerabilities such as an SQL injection. So what I need to do, I log in into the application so that I can get access to its pages. And then there is one page which has SQL injections. So basically here you have a form, and generally you could use it to show information about a user by just entering their user ID. So if you enter 1 and press submit, then it will in the background run a SQL select statement, select ID, first name, surname from users, where ID equals, and then whatever you enter in the form. So if I enter ID 1, I get the first user. If I enter ID 2, I get the second user. And now instead of just putting here a user ID, I put there single brackets, and it will here and the variable here that is entered in the SQL statement. And then I will go on with or 1 equals 1, without the enclosing bracket here, because that one is in the SQL statement in the web application. And when this statement is now run in the database, it will say select ID, first name, surname from users, where ID equals 1 or 1 equals 1. And therefore, we will get all the information for every user shown here on this page. So basically here, I'm now able to run a database command, which I'm not supposed to be. So that was one example for an SQL injection within a select statement. And I have another here on a different page. I will log in as well. And here on that sample page, we have a guest book. And in this guest book, I can just enter there some data such as hello webinar. And I submit. The entry was recorded. I should reload the page. I go there and the guest book says hello webinar. So what here happens in the background is that it's running an insert statement. So it will run insert into table guest book, username and text, and then values, and then it will put there the current username, which I have from being logged in, and the text that I'm entering here. So I can just write some text, again, some single brackets, some single quotes and a bracket, and then a comma. And now I've exited the current value of variables that should be entered into the database. And after the comma, I can just create another pair of values that should be entered. So I put there admin and text, and I put there a third one, which I put foo bar. And here now, I don't use any enclosing quotes or brackets, because that one will be the one which are in the database instead, in the application instead. So here again, now I could break out of the SQL statement and put there some more information that I'm supposed to do. That's not now currently not very interesting because it just enters the here input that I'm giving. But here, instead of the text, for example, I can run here another SQL statement. So I can do here select password from users where user name equals admin. So let's copy me that. And now what it will do is it will, instead of putting there one pair like username and some text, it will put there 3. And in the second one, it will read the username and password from the users table and put it here. So if I click submit, the entry was recorded. I reload the page, and now I can really see, okay, there are now 3 values, and the password of the admin user is Hexor. And here, actually, that's not really how it's supposed to be. So now that were 2 possibilities to run a SQL injection manually, one for a select statement and one for an insert statement. And basically, there are some of the very common SQL injection vulnerabilities. And to test them, you can either do it manually like this, or using some automated tools, which will test also for much more different ways how you can exploit or test for SQL injections. So I will now get back to that web page here, and I will run SQLMap to test this form automated or semi-automated for an SQL injection. We say semi-automated because it doesn't check the whole website, but only the one form which is here. So what I do now is I'll send a valid request so that I can grab the URL from the browser bar. And then I go here into my terminal. And what I need to do is basically run SQLMap -u, and then the URL including the parameters. Let me just remove the backslashes here because I use double quotes, so I don't need to escape them again. And now SQLMap, the -u flag, that's the URL, and it will go there and it sees here, okay, which parameters did I enter? So ID and submit, which comes from the submit button here, and they get parameters and will now actually try to exploit them. So I hit enter, and it says, yeah, legal disclaimer, don't use that for anything illegal. And I'm saying that to you as well, don't use those techniques for anything illegal, just use them to test your own application for vulnerabilities. And now what we can see here is we got a redirect to the login page. And that's not what we want to do. We don't want to go to the login page and test that for vulnerabilities. So I choose no. And quit. I'm not sure what happened. I thought I chose no. So the problem is here, as you remember, we need to log in before accessing the page. So therefore, we'll get a session cookie by PHP, and SQLMap doesn't have that. So what we need to do now is we grab the session cookie from our browser, give it to SQLMap, and then it will be able to check the correct website. So I go to inspect element, open the browser inspector here. I can see there was a GET request, and here I see there is a cookie with a PHP session ID. So I copy that and I run the command again, but additionally I enter --cookies and -cookie, and I put there the session ID and the security cookie. This is in there, and I hit enter again. And now it doesn't tell me about the redirect, so it could access the correct page, and it's giving me some questions. Let me just make that bigger. So it thinks that's MySQL. It wants to skip other payloads. That's okay, because it is actually MySQL, and it's asking me how to exploit it. We just go with the defaults here, and then now you can see, okay, there are things that appear to be injectable. So it actually has already found some things where it thinks that it can exploit them. Now it's asking me, okay, I found injection for the ID. Do you want to inject the submit button or get parameter as well? We don't want to. That's okay. We go with the one injection. So now what we can see here, it found 3 different possibilities to inject the website. And it's also showing us the payloads that it used. So for example, here, the payload with the Boolean based blind type of injection is basically nearly similar to the one that we were using with null equals null or 1 equals 1. So that's it for the semi-automated way to test for SQL injections. And if I would like to test the other forms on this website again with the manual way, it would be really tiresome. With the semi-automated, it might be a bit easier, but still I need to check each form on its own and provide it with the correct parameters and, for example, the login information, which I need to grab from the browser. So now I'm showing you a way with our Crashtest Security suite where we are doing that automatically for a complete website. So I go to our application and log in with our webinar user. And there you can see there is our dashboard. And I already created the projects for testing. There we have a test application, and you can see the URL is the same one of the application that we've been just testing manually and semi-automated. And if we go to the settings, then you will see that you have the possibility to provide us with a username and password for a certain login page. So that's actually the step that we did manually in the browser, entering username, password, grabbing the session cookie, giving it to SQLMap. That's the information that you need here so that the scanner can do that automatically for you. So we go back to the project and just hit start scan. And what's happening now in the background is that our scanner is going to the web page, crawling each subpage, and then starting a scanner for example, SQL injection for each and every of that subpage. So therefore, it might take a little bit longer than running SQLMap on the single form on your own, but also you tackle the whole application and not just one form. And so that will probably now take some time. Usually it takes 5 to 10 minutes until it finds the first SQL injection. As we have limited time in this webinar, I did that 2 days ago already for the very same application, and I just show you the findings that we get here. So here we'll get a list of the findings. We can even download our report, but I'll just show you in the dashboard. There's a category SQL injection. I open it, and we can see the same thing that we've seen already. There is an SQL injection for the parameter ID. That's the one that you can enter here. And it is sent as a get parameter, and you see the URL where we found it. And now that were 3 ways how to detect SQL injections in your application. And the next thing now, the probably most important thing, is how you can resolve them after you found them. And that is also something where we're happy to support you. And if you're using our application, then you may just use the link how to fix this issue, which takes you to our knowledge base. If you are not using our application but testing that manually, or for example with SQLMap, then you can just go to our wiki, which is public. The URL is wiki.crashtest-security.com, and you'll get the very same information there. And here now we're giving you a bit more of an explanation what actually happens with the SQL injection. That's basically the things that I've told you now and how you can resolve them. And for example, there's one thing, filter user import. So here, if you are suspected to enter an ID and nothing different, then what is a really good idea is to really restrict the input values here to just integers. So if I'm not able to enter a single bracket or those kind of signs, then that makes it impossible to use an SQL injection here. There are also some other techniques which you also might use in conjunction with each other. So for example, if you're using a web framework such as Laravel in PHP or Django in Python, then you'll probably use database mappers where you have models and then they will automatically be stored in the database. And if you use approaches like this, then this whole input filter or sanitation will be done automatically by the framework for you, so that you're pretty safe there. If you don't use a framework, then you should sanitize the input and use prepared statements, and that's a way where we're again filtering the user input and basically just making sure that you're not entering some signs that will break you out of the current SQL variable that's entered. So that's it about how you can resolve SQL injections. If you want to know more about that, just go to our wiki and read through the page, and we'll hope that it will help you resolving the injections on your side. So that was basically our webinar, our input on SQL injections. What we learned today is what are SQL injections, how you can exploit them, and then 3 ways, manual, semi-automated, and automatic ways to test for the applications, and also how you can fix the SQL injection vulnerabilities that you found. Now we will get back to Jan for the Q&A session.
Yeah, thank you very much, Janosch. There was one direct question I can answer myself. So SQLMap is a free open source tool. You can download it. We'll share the link later if you want to use it. And then you also get the link to our suite that Janosch showed in the automated way. And then Tufan had a question around how the test cases are uploaded and whether you can modify them. Tufan, if you're okay with it, I'll unmute you for a little bit more detail around the question. But Janosch, I'm not sure if you can answer directly. I'm not sure if it goes with the SQLMap tooling or with our Crashtest Security suite.
Yeah, so thanks. I hope you can hear me.
Yeah.
Okay, so just the question was that how can we, since the SQL injection can be changing, we can have latest vulnerabilities that we are not knowing right now. So can we update them in the tool? Is there a way we can have a manual input for the templates or checking kind of a WAF or something that's similar to that?
So you mean for SQLMap or for our tool for Crashtest Security?
For the SQLMap.
Okay, so basically SQLMap is an open source tool. So if you go to their website, you'll find a link to the GitHub repository, and you can just, if you have any test cases which are not included, you can probably just fork the repository, put it in the code and make a pull request, and then run them. And as you've said, WAF, so web application firewall, there is also like a toggle or detection of web application firewalls in SQLMap. You should probably have a look at that in the documentation, but I'm not sure that whether that might be helpful for you here.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I'll just have a look at that then. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And then with our tooling, we update our tool quite regularly when the latest vulnerabilities come out. So we just released last week 2 new scanners. So we'll update our Crashtest Security suite that Janosch showed quite regularly to be up to date. You can go to our website. There's a 30-day free trial if you want to use it and just test what our scanners find for your app. It's completely free. If you need any help, let us know. We'll also include these details in an email that we sent around after the webinar, as well as the link to the recording. So if you have any questions afterwards, feel free to let us know in a direct email. You have our details in the presentation as well as in the email. As this is our first webinar, I just posted a link to a really short questionnaire. It's just 3 questions. If you can fill it out, it helps us a lot to understand how we can improve and what topics you would like to see next, so that we know what to plan for. And then our next event that we have planned is probably around cross-site scripting vulnerabilities. This will be a month from now, but you'll see that on our Eventbrite page and in the email that we'll send out. With that, thank you very much for joining the webinar today. If you have any, as I said, any feedback, any questions, feel free to message us. Thank you very much for joining, and have a great rest of the day.